everybody. I'm really excited today because I have Amy Sulka. She's the president of Sandler right here in the greater Atlanta market and all of Georgia. And I am just privileged because she just came and spoke to my CEO group with this, and she gave a tremendous presentation. So I couldn't help myself wanting to share Amy's expertise with all of you. And really, what I'd like you to think about, what you're going to get over the next 15, 17 minutes or so, are three things. Amy is going to talk about owners that have thought about having sales and having it outsourced or trained so they don't have to get in the weeds. But they're stuck in the weeds still. And why is that a problem? The other thing is they're looking at their sales pipeline. They're seeing a lot of good things, but it doesn't materialize. Their pipeline doesn't match the results that they're thinking of getting. And then the third thing you're going to get out of this presentation is you're going to answer the question, why do I seem to hire the wrong salespeople over and over again? Amy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for inviting me in to speak to your CEO group.
It was our pleasure. People walked away with handouts, with examples. It was immediately met with some great attention and follow-ups, which of course people like. So why don't we start out with this and let's answer the question, why as a business owner, when I have already tried sales training or tried outsourced sales or even hired some wonderful people, why doesn't it work for me?
Well, I work with a lot of founder-led businesses, and or I guess three of the common themes that keep showing up when I talk to these owners. The first one is they'll say things like, I hired a team or I hired a sales leader so that I can get myself out of the sales function of the business, but I'm still the one closing the biggest deals. Or every time I try to step away, things slow down. Like I can't seem to transfer all that tribal knowledge that I have that got the business to where it is to get this team producing. The second thing they'll tell me is, I don't think we have a sales problem. I look at the pipeline and the pipeline's full. I just don't trust the data that's in it. And so they're having to do business planning decisions for growth of the company that may include things like, when do I add headcount? How do I scale? How do I take a new service to market? Maybe they want to do acquisitions or they need to go get a business loan for a new piece of equipment. All of this stuff requires uh, it requires forecast reports and it requires revenue and accuracy and tracking. And they're seeing the revenue do like this. It's going up and down and up and down, and there's no consistency to it. And so they don't have confidence in being able to execute the business plans and the strategies that they're creating. The third thing that I hear a lot is I can't trust the sales team or their people are working hard, but for whatever reason, they're not performing, they're underperforming, they're in comfort zones. And I feel like I keep hiring the wrong team, and they don't see sales training as a function of how to help get the right team in the right roles and get that team performing consistently. And so these are all issues that I am able to help with.
So let's dive in. How can a business owner change the trajectory of what's pipeline and make it a more trustworthy source to budget or to make acquisitions or purchases based on what's on the books and in the pipeline?
The first thing to understand is the pipeline itself isn't the problem. It's a symptom of a problem. And some of my clients, they come to me and they say, hey, we've tried sales training in the past and it didn't work for us. Our salespeople, like they got some techniques, but they reverted back to their old habits. So when we are looking at solving a problem, we have to understand the full picture and we have to implement a full system. All right, so the skills training is one part of how we're going to do that, but that's going to have the least impact of how we're going to help a company achieve success over time. Before we can give them skills training, and we have great skills training, we have to make sure that we're giving the right training to the right people. So we're going to help them evaluate the staff. And with the staff, we might run some benchmarking assessments, right? We've got some tools to be able to evaluate, do we have the right people in the right roles? What kind of training do they need? Hunters need different training than farmers. Customer success people need different training than business development people, for example. Are they in comfort zones? Do they have the right mindset that they're even going to do the things that we teach them to do if we invest in the training? Sometimes we have to have a conversation about that before we even make that investment. The third part of that is going to be the structure, right? So who are the salespeople reporting to, and how are we going to protect this investment in training to ensure that they don't fall back into bad habits, right? So that might be the business owner directly. There might be a sales leader in between, or multiple sales leaders. And so I want to understand, like, what does your sales process look like today? Where are they getting stuck? How are your sales leaders, or you as the business owner, holding them accountable? Do you need some tools for accountability, or do you already have some in place? Do you have an operating framework to be able to do things like pipeline review, deal coaching? Do we have the right communication skills for those coaching conversations? Are we doing role play? Are we doing pre-call planning, debrief meetings? Because all of these things are going to become beneficial in being able to hold that team accountable to all of the new skills that we're training on. But none of this is going to be effective if we're doing it with the wrong strategy. And so the strategy is the foundation of the triangle, right? That's got to be the base, because when I hear people say we need more sales isn't a strategy. We can get more revenue, we can get more sales in a variety of ways. So do we need more new logo accounts? Do we need expansion with existing business into new products, new markets, new services? Do we need a larger average deal size? Do we need to stop giving away our margin? So there's a lot of ways that we can get new revenue, but we need to know what strategy, what KPI are we measuring for? And then we'll know, okay, how do we need to apply the training? What training do they need to be able to get those results?
So when you go into a organization looking to improve, what are the steps you go through to analyze? You mentioned doing a kind of a personality test to make sure the salespeople are, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe are in the right seat in the organization. How does that process work?
For many of our company, or for many of our clients rather, we will start with some benchmarking assessments. So it's not a personality test, so to speak. The first one is DISC, which is a measure of communication skills. And so we're understanding, how does the team like to communicate today? Partly that helps me as their coach know how they like to receive feedback, but that also affects how they're selling. How are they coming across to their prospects and their clients? I also have some other benchmarking assessments that I can run that will measure, where are their sales skills today? So once I know, like, where are you today? Where do you want to be? What's the gap? What's causing that gap? Then it will help me hone in on, okay, here's really the black and white data of what's causing them to not get over that hump. And so what we know is sales is both conceptual and it's technical. All right, technical, I can teach them, for example, how to make a no pressure prospecting call. But if they don't have the mental, this is the conceptual, they don't have the mindset that they're willing to pick up the phone, it doesn't matter how good they are at the skill if they're not going to do it, right? And so some of these other assessments will help me evaluate, do they have some conceptual blockers? It will look at things like culture, right? If we put them in under pressure, where are they going to run? And so it will also help us not only in creation of the training plan. I have clients that come to me and they run these same benchmarking assessments before they make a hire. And I am able to call out some red flags to say, okay, bring them back in for a third interview. Here's some situational things that you may want to ask them some questions about just to validate if there's going to be a concern here.
I love it. All right, well, let's change gears and talk about how do you analyze a pipeline? What do you see that's typically wrong in pipeline, either accounts or data? And then how would you go about getting them on the right track to have a better pipeline?
One thing that I see a lot, and this actually happened to me when I was a sales leader also, a lot of sales leaders get promoted into that position because they were good at sales, but the competencies that make them good at sales don't necessarily make them good at management or leadership. And so oftentimes sales leaders are promoted into that position. They aren't given any training on how to be a good leader. And so the things that they learned to do that made them good salespeople, sometimes they struggle being able to get their team to reproduce those results, and they can't explain why they can't get the team to do the things that they did, right? And so they don't have the language or the questions to ask to say, okay, well, when you put this deal in this deal stage, tell me what made it qualified. When you say this deal's coming in this month, what happened in the meeting? What did the customer agree to? And then we've got some qualification metrics that we can teach them to ask better questions, because what we see is the sales rep, sometimes they'll go to lunch and they'll be like, we had a great meeting, we really hit it off, I think this deal's coming in, but there was no actual qualification done in that meeting. And so they're selling based off of relationship, and then those relationships get put into the pipeline based off of emotion, not based off of any real criteria. And the sales leader doesn't have the language or the questions to ask the sales rep, okay, tell me why this deal is qualified. How did it end up in this stage? And this kind of escalates into a snowball where the sales leader is then reporting weather forecast instead of being able to come in and say, okay, here's why we believe this is going to close this month or this volume. And so they end up saying things like, hey, the quarter looks good. We're going to have a really good month. And then we have inconsistencies and stuff falls out of the pipeline at the last minute. Last week of the month, we're seeing those deal close dates. They're getting pushed out next month, next quarter. And all of a sudden, what looked like a good pipeline at the start of the month has now shrunk.
Mhm. I recall from the presentation that you did, talking about getting salespeople for a firm commitment on next steps. And some salespeople just don't seem to be able to pull the trigger on that. Are there any tricks on trying to get somebody to commit to a next step and or to clean up a pipeline with people that are constantly kicking the ball down the road?
Yeah, let me give you a couple of examples of this in practice. I think a lot of times salespeople think that they have next steps when they don't. And so they will hear something that sounds like, hey, this all sounds great. Can't think of any reason why we won't do business together. Why don't I call you next week to wrap things up? And the sales rep gets happy ears and they think that they have next steps, but they don't. They've just given up control of their process to the buyer and they didn't even see it happen. And so next week, when they don't hear anything, they get ghosted, they follow up, they follow up, they follow up, they follow up, they don't hear back, but they've now projected this in the pipeline, right? And they're telling the owner or the sales leader, hey, this deal's coming in this month. And now they're in this high stakes game of chase and their buyer's gone into the witness protection program.
Mm.
What we would rather have them do is get what we call a clear future commitment, which means the buyer and the seller have both agreed to a time, date, and place for the next interaction. Now, that interaction may be over Zoom, and that's okay. But what we would rather have the sales rep do instead of wait on the buyer to call them back next week is to say, okay, well, how long are you thinking that you need to, talk to your business partner or, whoever else is in the decision? And they'll say, give us until Tuesday. Okay, so by Wednesday morning, would it make sense for us to put a touch base on the calendar to get your answer? The other thing I see happen is I see it all the time. I go to networking events and people are like, hey, we'll trade business cards. We should meet and go to coffee. I'm like, pull your phones out right now, schedule the coffee. You've both got your calendars, so let's get it scheduled. Like, why extend the sales process and wait until you get back to the office and then get in this follow up? Just pull out your calendar and schedule the coffee because you both got it on you. And so people usually laugh and they're like, yeah, I don't know why I didn't think about that. But those are the kinds of things when we talk about getting a clear future commitment, like, let's just go ahead and get it on the calendar.
I love it. I love it. Good words of wisdom. Last question I have for you. How do you get owners out of their own head to be open to improving their sales teams? And even sales leaders themselves quite often can get in their own head about, do I even want somebody coming in and touching my team and analyzing? How do you get them out of that headspace and open to getting feedback?
Well, a lot of times people they don't think that they need sales training or they don't understand how sales training will help them until they come to one of my presentations and I'm able to uncover all of these blind spots. Like, here's why these things are happening. And so to the point I made earlier, when people think of sales training, they think of skills training. Like, how do I get to decision makers? How do I close effectively? And yes, that's a big part of what we teach, but they don't sometimes understand the bigger picture of the entire system, right? How are we going to train your leaders to extricate you from the sales division, right? How are we going to get the revenue up and put a system in place that increases the enterprise value of your company so that when you go to sell, you're not the business. The business has proven systems in place and you've got consistent pipelines over time and forecast over time that you can show this is when we said it was coming in, this is when it's closing, and now we can go to market for an exit and show I don't have to be the business, right? That's the biggest risk for most of the founder-led companies is when they go to exit, they are the business, and so they don't get the multiple that they want. And sales
I,
training and implementing that process is going to be a huge part of how we're going to help them. And so I think when they start thinking bigger picture and they start to understand that, they become more open to the conversation.
I love it. So some of the takeaways here from today's session is a path to get owners out of their own head on why sales training is so important. And it isn't just about sales skills. It's about a clean pipeline. It's about identifying the right people, the right skill set. It is a combination of all these things to make a team hit on all cylinders. So, Amy, thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom today. Truly appreciate it. I think the pipeline matters as you put out. Getting the right people, doing the right thing is so important along the way. Now, people are going to want to get to know you a little better and maybe explore about you, Sandler. How do they get a hold of you?
They can email me, amy.sulka@sandler.com. Free to call me. I'll give you my cell phone, 678-521-9789. I'd love to see if I can help.
Amy, thank you again. This is brilliant, and I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Scott.